give some advice and help to those IT managers out there that are tasked with, building the cloud or, choosing a vendor. If they're going to go out and start shopping, what question or questions that they should ask a vendor? And of course, they're going to be contracting with many different types of vendors, perhaps. But what is the quality? Either it's service level agreements, uptime, reliability. What should people be asking cloud vendors before they sign that dotted line? Bernard, any advice on that?
Well, I guess I'd go back and circle back to what I said at the beginning, which is you need to identify a cloud provider that gives you the capabilities to build the kind of application that you want to put together. Mm-hmm. Some cloud providers, all they provide is virtual machines. Some have a very rich kind of portfolio of application services that enable you to build these kinds of applications that we've been talking about. And depending on what you need, that's going to direct you toward a particular cloud provider. I guess I'm a contrarian in this, in that I think an awful lot of the stuff that people think they should negotiate around are things that that in the reality of everyday use aren't going to be things that make a difference in the way you use your cloud environment. SLAs. People think, oh, I'm gonna go and really hammer down on this SLA, and that's going to make some magic difference in the cloud provider. Cloud providers all try and make their stuff available. There's none of them slacking off, or none of them going, there's whatever. There's not that much money here, so I'm going to really slack on this. All of them do the very best they can. There will be outages. Thinking that having an SLA that your lawyer has gone and put the screws to somebody is going to change that experience, that's not the case. So what you're going to get is, after the fact, how much of a settlement should we get? Mm-hmm. In terms of, if you're building a business that requires availability, you have to figure out, how do I build my application? How do I inure myself against failures, against outages? And there's a very well-established set of architectural practices around that you can build in increasing levels of resilience to your application environment depending on how complex an application architecture you're willing to countenance and how much you're willing to invest to implement that. And so, I guess I'm contrarian in that. I sort of think the stuff that people think they're going to imagine that they can negotiate with a cloud provider to solve those problems, probably not going to be that fruitful. They'd be better served in looking at ways they can protect their business in the event of those kinds of outages.
Tom, your advice, what's the question that shoppers should ask a vendor before they sign on the dotted line? They might not think about.
Well, given that I work with pretty much every vendor out there, but my particular app requires a little differences in that I need servers in different geographic locations, and that's a lot of reasons why I actually do it. But I think when you look at cloud computing, it shouldn't really be anything other than when you look at applications or your business. And I take Rob's point earlier that it's not just the app, it's your business that you're trying to do. You really have to think about cloud architecture when thinking about a vendor. And what I mean by that is, if you're building an application with a lot of video, you better have a lot of bandwidth, and you better check the provider's ability to deliver that bandwidth and such as you go forward. And in some cases, if you have a distributed user community, you want to have your application maybe closer to the CDNs, or look at the CDN provider's locations, and sometimes that will choose. The location, the geolocation will choose. Pricing rarely. Go ahead.
You mentioned checking their capability. How do you actually do that in the real world?
Well, to some degree, I guess I'm promoting myself here, because SOSTA does predictive analytics, so you can simulate traffic hitting a website before you go live, and you can understand not only what's happening at the application layer, but the infrastructure layer, and also the network and the user experience layer. And by doing predictive analytics like that, you can better understand how to optimize your infrastructure and your network. Mm-hmm. So whether it's changing your file location on a CDN, upgrading your load balancers, improving your bandwidth through all of those things are what our customers do on a daily basis. So there's ways of understanding what behavior is going to be in a live environment by using testing techniques. But I really think that the cloud is no different. Using the cloud as an infrastructure is no different than building a mobile app or a website these days. You just have to look at it with the benefits of the cloud involved, whether it be elasticity or location or agility, overall agility to how you go to the market, and incorporate that into your architectural approach. And in doing that, you're going to optimize your environment. If you don't, you're going to have the same problems that you had with a LAMP stack in the client-server environment, where you have a very locked-in and optimized environment, and less conditions change, which means more users come online, and you're kind of locked in and locked out. So what customers are looking at is that agility of optimizing on a daily basis towards their infrastructure, their network, their user experience, as well as the application itself.
Michael, what do you tell people? I mean, how to shop for a vendor? What difficult questions should they ask? What they make sure they get in writing before they sign?
Well, I mean, I think it's a lot about what's been previously said, but I think that at the end of the day, you have to move forward despite what you don't know. What I get from a lot of folks is that my needs are elastic, but my wallet isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to start thinking through what's my approach? How do I de-risk the value prop? Is there a way? Do I have a blueprint and architecture that I'm thinking through? How do I source and provision the capability that I need? What's the policies on controlling and managing the spend, the environment? How do I meter it? From IT, how do I charge it back? How do I keep it secure? And importantly, what's the target environment for what kind of data? Because compliance is a big issue. Data privacy and whatnot are all things that people need to think through. And so, finding those skills aren't prevalent in the market. I mean, Tom's probably got a bunch of skills and they're all locked away somewhere. He doesn't want them getting out. So
That's very proprietary.
we're all protective like that. So stay away from my best folks, and we all try to keep them as happy as possible because they're doing Herculean jobs, right? They're heroes day in, day out, because a lot of this stuff, I mean, we're hacking our way through a jungle. The experiences that are being gained. I mean, we're still early days. Depending on who you talk to, you're into single-digit adoption of public cloud services. The tipping point is here. I think we're going to see fairly rapid adoption across enterprises, where the penetration of public cloud services just starts the hockey stick. And so, given that, that means it's going to go into a lot of other places. And that it's not just business is pushing that adoption or individual developers, but IT starts to move aggressively in this space. So look for a vendor with that depth of experience, that vertical alignment. That perhaps depending, I reach out to the global 2000, so I need to have global capability, and being able to pull together best of breed and not some kind of narrow agenda, whether it be hardware, right? If the guy's saying, we'll have it delivered on your loading dock next week, that ain't cloud, right? So there's a lot of false cloud, propositions out there, and so self-service, automation, speed, price, all key fundamental characteristics of cloud.
Rob, you get a chance to bring us home. What do you tell people if they're shopping for a provider? I mean, what questions must they get answered before they shell out the money?
Well, I think people tend to get hooked on a lot of the the big numbers, like the tier ratings and security certifications and the availability and the SLA. And I would agree with the previous comments on that. Nobody's planning to be up 75% of the time, so the SLA doesn't really matter. For me, I'd like to say look for things like your ability to get out becomes very important, right? Indemnification, liability, termination clauses, and then technical portability becomes very important. Because the one thing that you can be sure of is that the world is going to change, and you're either going to want to go to a different provider, or the provider is, for financial reasons, not going to be able to fulfill your needs, right? There will be churn in this industry. So that becomes important. But I think you have to look very much at the availability of APIs and support of APIs, because any tool or platform that you're going to use is probably going to want to integrate with the cloud platform that you're using, and if that is very limited, it becomes problematic. But other than that, I come back to what does your app need, and figure out what that is and focus on that.
That sounds good. I appreciate the four of you sharing your expertise. I will send you a link when this is all put together. I thank you again, and I will be in touch. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for having us.
All right.
Thank you, James.
Thank you very much for the invitation, James.